Am I the antagonist for asking my mother-in-law to stop telling people I'm English? I recently moved to the United States with my girlfriend, Emma. We met 3 years ago when she moved to the United Kingdom to pursue a professional qualification that took 2 years. She worked in the UK for a year before we both decided to move to the US together. Prior to this move, I had never personally met her parents, although I had met her older sister, Jane. I know that both Emma and Jane had spoken to their parents about me. I'm Scottish, and I have lived there my entire life, just like my parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. In fact, my family has been recorded in the Scottish census since it began in 1801, and our lineage goes back several hundred years before that. This fact doesn't usually come up unless I encounter Americans who claim to be Scottish. Normally, this doesn't bother me. However, during a recent family gathering at Emma's parents' house, numerous extended family members approached me and expressed their joy about Emma returning from England. They found it interesting that I was English, which was quite confusing since Emma studied not far from my Scottish village, and I am not English. Politely, I corrected them, but they all appeared confused and changed the subject. After this happened for the 10th time, I'm not exaggerating, I discussed it with Emma, and she was just as bewildered as I was. About an hour later, while in the kitchen with Emma, her mother stormed in angrily and asked me what I had been telling people. I was confused because I had conversed with many people about various topics. When she clarified her question, I explained to her that I had been informing people that I'm not English as I am not, and that Emma studied in Scotland since she did. She became upset, insisting that England is just what people call the UK, and it's all the same. I maintain that it is not the same, regardless of politics, because England and Scotland are two separate countries. I requested that she stop telling people I am English and instead refer to me as Scottish or British. Emma agreed with me, and we explained that we understood she did not intend to cause offense. But it was confusing and mildly offensive. Strangely, she then argued that she was referring to the continent and accused me of trying to make her look foolish when I pointed out that such a reference would make me European. She proceeded to ignore both of us for the remainder of the evening, including Jane, who sided with us. Since that incident, it has become Emma, Jane, and me against Emma's parents and everyone else. I now somewhat regret speaking up. Emma's mother has been alternating between bombarding our phones and giving us the silent treatment, and I'm exhausted from it all. Am I the antagonist for asking her to change her behavior? It is understandable that you corrected people multiple times, as it can be frustrating to constantly be misidentified. It seems like you and Emma approached the conversation with her mother respectfully, and it is unfortunate that she responded defensively and took offense. It is not fair for her to continue blowing up your phones and giving you the silent treatment for expressing a valid concern. Am I the antagonist for assuming my boyfriend's sister-in-law spoke Spanish and not wanting to apologize again for it? First of all, I want to apologize for any mistakes you may find in this post, as English is not my native language. Now, I'm a 20-year-old woman who was born and raised in Latin America. I had the opportunity to travel to the United States to learn English, and currently I am residing in Oregon. I will be returning to my country in a few months. A few months ago, I started dating Josh, a 20-year-old man. It has been really enjoyable, and before I leave, he wanted me to experience more of his culture. Last week, he invited me to his parents' house for a barbecue and to watch an American football game. His family is really enthusiastic about this sport. Josh was particularly excited for me to meet his brother's wife, Carla, who is in her 30s. He told me that Carla has Cuban ancestry and is very proud of it. He even showed me her social media, where her username was CubanMom1. She had numerous TikToks about being a Latino in the United States, and everything in her feed revolved around her Cuban identity. He also mentioned that she misses living in Miami because the Latino community there is larger. So when the day came, I went to greet Josh's brother and Carla, and I started speaking to her in Spanish, just to introduce myself. She didn't respond right away and just stared at me. I got nervous and kept babbling in Spanish until she said "excuse me" and rushed off to the bathroom. Her husband followed her, leaving me standing there with Josh and their kids. It was a bit awkward since Josh's parents were watching us, expecting Carla to be excited to meet me. However, nobody said anything and we just carried on. They kept their distance from us for the rest of the evening. When Josh was about to take me home, his brother pulled us aside and asked me to apologize to Carla for making stupid assumptions about her and trying to make her look like an idiot in front of his parents. Apparently, Carla is not fluent in Spanish and only knows a few words. I didn't think it was that big of a deal and simply said, "I'm sorry, it was an honest mistake." I assumed you would know the language since most of your social media content is based on your Cuban identity. Carla's husband became extremely angry and started raising his voice, demanding a better apology. Josh quickly pulled me out before things escalated further. Since then, both Carla and her husband have been complaining to Josh and his parents about my behavior, stating that I was out of line and need to apologize properly. Josh's parents have chosen not to get involved, but Josh is on my side and has reassured me multiple times that I have nothing to apologize for. Personally, I also don't believe I did anything wrong, but they have decided to make this a major issue. You made a genuine mistake and attempted to communicate with her in a language that you thought she might understand based on her social media presence. It was a simple misunderstanding, and it is unreasonable for Carla and her husband to demand a better apology from you for an honest error. Josh, who is directly involved in the situation, supports you and believes that you have nothing to apologize for. Therefore, you are not in the wrong in this situation. Am I the antagonist for avoiding my mom after she called the cops on me for leaving during visitation days? I'm a 15-year-old girl who decided to cut off contact with my mom after she called the police to my house. To provide some background, my mom does not have custody of me, and I have been living with my dad and grandmother for almost 5 years. Despite this, my mom has visitation rights every other weekend, and I have always been willing to spend time with her and my younger brothers, 8-year-old and 5-year-old. In early August, I had to stay with my mom for a week during the summer. Instead of picking me up herself, she sent my uncle to drive me to her house. To make matters worse, she texted me her schedule and informed me that she would be very busy. She would finish work at 10:30 p.m. on most nights, and on other days, she would work from 7 p.m., promising that we would do something together afterwards. I had a feeling that she would be too tired to actually do anything, but I agreed anyway. That night, I got my period and asked my mom via text where the painkillers were. She responded by saying that there were none and the only pads available were too small. I informed her about this and she just told me to suck it up. The next morning, my mom woke me up at 5 a.m. to explain how to take care of my brothers while she was away. She gave me specific instructions on what to make for their breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. However, when it came to myself, she simply told me to figure something out. She also told me that she would buy more pads when she had the money. My brothers are spoiled by my mom and there are no consequences for their hitting or kicking. They are allowed to spend all day in front of screens. I hope that maybe it was just a bad day for my mom and that she would ask another family member to babysit my brothers the following day, after seeing how much I hated it. However, she repeated the same routine the next day, waking me up at 5 a.m. and explaining what to cook. She also mentioned that, as a treat for babysitting, she would take me shopping for my brother's school supplies. Not for me or for my personal hygiene, but specifically for my brothers. Not even halfway through the day, and after dealing with 2 fights between my brothers, I texted my dad to come pick me up and started packing my things. I fed both of my brothers before leaving and texted my mom halfway home to let her know. I lied and said that I had taken an Uber home, not revealing that my dad had picked me up. As soon as I got to my house, my mom and a police officer showed up at my door, trying to guilt me into going back and staying with her for the rest of the week. I refused to leave my doorstep, quietly listened to their rant, and then firmly said no before closing the door on her. The next day, my mom texted me saying, "I love you unconditionally, but when you are ready, we can make amends." I told her not to come over anymore and we haven't spoken since. My aunt has taken over my mom's weekends, and now I spend that time sleeping over at my cousin's house. Am I the asshole in this situation? You are not the asshole in this situation. It is clear that your mother has not been prioritizing your needs and has treated you unfairly by expecting you to take care of your brothers while neglecting you. Additionally, her behavior of calling the cops to your house and trying to guilt you into going back to her shows a lack of respect for your boundaries. You have the right to set boundaries and prioritize your own well-being. It is understandable that you have chosen to go no contact with your mother and spend time at your aunt's house instead. It is important to prioritize your own mental and emotional health, and it seems like being away from your mother's toxic behavior is a good decision. It's up to you whether or not you want to reconnect with your mother in the future, but it is important that she understands the impact of her actions and takes responsibility for them. Your well-being should be the priority, and you should not feel obligated to be a free babysitter or endure mistreatment from your mother. Am I the antagonist for calling my parents insensitive and telling them they managed to take things so far they are beyond repair? I, a 25-year-old female, have an older brother named Nick who is 38 years old. Nick was married to his childhood sweetheart, Cassie, until she passed away 10 years ago. They had 2 children together. Cassie was a beloved member of our family and essentially my sister. I grew up knowing her and she was amazing. My brother loved her deeply as well. Since Cassie's death, Nick has never dated or had a romantic relationship. Although he may not have the same kind of happiness he had with Cassie, he still appears to be happy overall. He focuses on other aspects of his life instead of pursuing new relationships. However, this bothers our parents. 2 years after Cassie's death, they began suggesting that my brother leave the kids with them and go out to meet women. They even introduced him to potential matches, including widows. Despite my brother expressing disinterest in dating and asking them to stop pushing him, my parents continued to do so. Over time, this strained their relationship with Nick and my nephews. About a year ago, my nephews expressed that their dad doesn't need a woman to be a good father. Yet my parents insisted that their lives would be better with a new mom and wife for Nick. They never considered that their mom was irreplaceable. My nephews clearly stated that they never wanted a new mom and detested the assumption my parents frequently made. I have spoken to my brother and nephews about this issue. I provide support and lend an ear when they need to vent. I've also tried to reason with my parents in the past, telling them that Nick is happy, but they refuse to listen or consider my perspective. Recently, my parents reached their limit with Nick's decisions and confronted him at his house while I was present. They claimed it was unhealthy for him not to have moved on and encouraged him to find a new relationship. They even suggested that if his marriage to Cassie was terrible, or if she made him promise to never find another partner, he should find a way to get over it and move on. Enraged, my brother kicked them out and said he never wanted to see them again. My parents later complained to me about the incident. I told them that they had always been insensitive towards my brother's love life after Cassie's passing, but this time, they had crossed the line, and the damage was irreparable. I expressed that it was disgusting for them to belittle Cassie just because my brother didn't want to live his life the way they wanted him to. In response, my parents claimed that I didn't care about my brother's happiness and refused to see their side. Yesterday, they called me rude and said my behavior was uncalled for. So, am I the asshole? It is clear that your parents have been insensitive and pushy towards your brother, disregarding his feelings and wishes. It's disrespectful for them to constantly bring up the idea of finding a new partner for him, especially when he has clearly expressed his lack of interest in dating. You have done your best to support your brother and his children, and you have even tried to communicate with your parents about their behavior. But they have consistently chosen to ignore your perspective. Their actions, such as insulting Cassie and disrespecting your brother's boundaries, have caused irreparable damage to their relationship with him. It's important to prioritize your brother's emotional well-being and respect his choices. Your parents need to understand that their interference and insensitivity have hurt him and the family dynamics. Standing up for your brother and telling your parents that their behavior is inappropriate and hurtful is not rude. It's necessary. So in this scenario, you are definitely not the asshole. Am I the antagonist for getting pregnant by someone else so quick after separation? I'm not even sure myself if I, a 34-year-old female, feel bad because I'm the am I the asshole, or I just feel bad for my ex, a 44-year-old male. It's from a while ago but still bugging me. I'm sorry it's so long. In an attempt to condense why we broke up, we were together for approximately 8 years. He had major spending issues. Collectibles, appliances, gadgets, you name it. I felt like I was drowning in a hoard and debt of stuff. Every argument we had, I somehow ended up comforting him without a resolution. We weren't having sex, he was addicted to porn. So much more, and we brought out the worst in each other. We also had fertility issues that we could never save up enough to treat. I was depressed for a long time, and one night when he asked me why I was avoiding him, I let it all out. He got very defensive, and I again somehow ended up comforting him. I stayed up all night crying because I couldn't stand it anymore. And in the morning he asked me why I didn't come to bed, then said, "What if I'd had a heart attack?" Folks, this was the exact moment I knew I probably wanted to get a divorce, because it was a slap in the face of an example of his self-centeredness. As if he couldn't have had a heart attack the million other nights he slept on the couch while I was upstairs alone. He doubled down by blaming my best friend for poisoning me, even though she was trying to convince me to work it out, sent flirty messages to another good friend within a week, and made a very cringy comment about dating my mom. All of that was enough for me to know we were done. But the icing on the cake was finding out he had almost immediately joined dating sites and soon upgraded to premium memberships, all the while expressing to me that I was his world. He'd do anything to make it better to get back together. Shortly after my ex moved out, an online friend, a 35-year-old male, learned I was single and started getting flirty. I casually flirted back, but when I found out my ex had joined dating sites, I allowed this new fling to progress. I figured, why not? If my ex feels ready to move on, why can't I? We met up twice, and I know that it was wild and dumb and wonderful. But I found myself pregnant on that second visit, around 7 months after my ex and I separated. My ex now hates me, spent at least the first year plus trash-talking me because, of course, I blindsided him during our happy marriage. And this has been bugging me for years. The professionals I have confided in about this say that I shouldn't feel guilty, as his outcome was never my responsibility. But I can't shake the guilt that I got my happily ever after, and he's still alone and likely forever childless. I'll totally own that I was dumb and irresponsible for getting knocked up, but am I the asshole? Relationships are complex, and it seems like your ex had many unresolved issues that contributed to the breakdown of your marriage. You tried to communicate your feelings and concerns to him, but he responded with defensiveness and selfishness. You deserve to be in a healthy and fulfilling relationship, and if that means moving on after your separation, then that is your choice. It is not your responsibility to ensure your ex's happiness or future. The guilt you feel may be a result of societal expectations or internalized guilt, but the professionals you have confided in have already reassured you that you are not to blame. Focus on your own happiness and the well-being of your child. Am I the antagonist for getting up and leaving in the middle of my first date? Twice? Am I the asshole for getting up and leaving in the middle of my first date twice? Tonight I went on a first date. I matched with this guy on Hinge a couple of days ago. We chatted a bit, exchanged numbers, and eventually set up a date for tonight, which was 2 hours ago. I arrived at the address he gave me, and he texted me that he would be a few minutes late. No worries. He called me when he pulled in and finally told me where we were going. He wouldn't tell me before, just gave me the address of a shared parking lot. I was walking around a little lost, trying to find the place as we were on the phone, when I heard him at the bar ordering a drink. Maybe I'm being dramatic, but if I can't find the place we're meeting at, why isn't he trying to help me instead of going inside and ordering a beer? Anyway, red flag number 1, maybe number 2 since he wouldn't tell me where we were going in the first place. I hung up, found the bar, went in, ordered a drink, and we sat down at a counter next to each other looking out on the pier. We made a little conversation, and there was very little eye contact for about 20 or so minutes, maybe even less, as we looked at the menu. He was staring out at the water and would randomly say things like, "Oh, we're so lucky, I love the water, isn't this just the best?" But he genuinely did not seem like he was enjoying his time with me. He did not try to ask me questions or make conversation or maintain eye contact. He just didn't seem that into me. It wasn't super awkward, but we definitely weren't vibing like we were on the phone. 20 minutes in, he says, "I gotta go pee. If the waitress comes when I'm gone, you can order the appetizer." Except 5, 6, 7, then 8 minutes went by, and he wasn't back from the bathroom. It started to cross my mind that maybe he left. He had left his card down to pay for the drinks when we ordered. So after 10 minutes, I thought, well, at least I got a free drink, I'm out. I walked back to my car, and just as I put my keys in the ignition, he texted me asking where I was. I told him I thought you left, so I did too. I said you took 10 minutes to pee. He replied, "I didn't pee, but okay." I called him and asked if he wanted me to come back, and he said yes, he was still there drinking his beer. I walked back and sat down, but he was fully engaged in a conversation with the woman next to him. It seemed like she was also on a date. She was a lot older, so I'm not assuming he was flirting. However, he didn't even acknowledge the fact that I came back. I sat there for 5 minutes on my phone, scrolling Reddit, while he continued to ask this woman questions and have a full-blown conversation with her. So again, for the second time, I gathered my stuff and left. I drove home and got a text from him. Soon after that read, "I went to the bathroom and was having a conversation, so kind of think about if your reaction was justified. But thanks for coming." Which leaves me thinking, am I the asshole? You're definitely not the asshole in this situation. From the beginning, it seems like your date was not considerate or attentive towards you. He didn't provide clear directions for the meeting place, didn't offer help when you were lost, and even started ordering a drink without waiting for you. These are all red flags and show a lack of courtesy. Furthermore, during the date, he showed little interest in you and didn't engage in conversation. His behavior with the woman next to him, whether it was flirting or not, was disrespectful towards you. It's understandable that you felt ignored and decided to leave the second time. Your reaction was justified because you were not being treated with respect or given the attention you deserve on a first date. It's important to prioritize your own feelings and comfort in these situations. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.